of Grand Prix Memphis. Hello and welcome to the finals of Grand Prix Memphis. You are looking at Pro Tour Hall of Famer Ben Stark there on the left, playing against Jack Fogle. Jack's trying to get to silver here. He's trying to string together qualifications for the next 3 Pro Tours.
Yeah, I mean, this could be pretty huge for Jack. I mean, he just cashed the last 2 Pro Tours in a row, wasn't qualified for the coming Pro Tour, and yet this was the last possible chance in which he could do so, and here he is competing in the finals. Even if he does decently in Brussels, he's going to get silver, and this could easily just be a double PTQ win for him.
It's a triple PTQ, because then he'll get the first one next year as well. So huge event for Jack Fogle. Every point here matters. I love the deck Sultai control. We've watched it just drown his opponents in cards. The Cure, the Crashing Wave, Ugin, the Spirit Dragon,
Garrick, Apex Predator,
Liliana Vess, Ashiok. It's really just a pretty amazing Planeswalker deck. Here we see him leading off with Sideboard and Thoughtseize. And it looks like he sees Seeker of the Way, Outpost Siege, Lightning Strike, and Chain to the Rocks. Chain to the Rocks, pretty much a dead card here for Ben Stark in this matchup.
Yeah, about the worst thing that could be in his hand. Essentially a mulligan here for Ben, but you're definitely not going down to 6 cards with 3 very good spells and 3 lands in hand.
And Jack Fogle wants to be the guy with all the card advantage. He takes the Outpost Siege and says, get that out of here.
I do not want to see that.
So Temple of Triumph comes down for Ben Stark. Starts the parade of 2 drops. Here's the Seeker of the Way. It gets just Vile Blight. And there's an Urborg there, so he's got the double black. Plays the Polluted Delta. Passes the turn.
It's looking really good for Jack.
Here's a Hordling Outburst.
Jack already used that Vile Blight, so Hordling Outburst could be a really good threat here. He's going to need a Crux of Fate to clean things up.
He's holding one. That's his green for his oh-so-valuable Satyr Wayfinders, the only creature in his deck.
The Satyr Wayfinder has been doing a lot of work for him this weekend. We've watched that card just... It seemingly, deals 5 points of damage to his opponent, then gains him 4 life by chump blocking something, and then makes his dig through times cost 4 less mana while also finding him a land. Yeah, basically 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's absolutely what the card does. Here's Crux of Fate, just 1-for-1ing with a Hordling Outburst. And Ben Stark starts throwing matches at his opponents. There's Stoke the Flames, drops Jack to 11.
And Ben wants to use these burn spells really aggressively at Jack's face in this matchup because the only thing that he can target with the burn spells is Jack's face. Sure, he can kill a Planeswalker, but you really want to pressure Jack's life total with those burn spells because once he starts getting a Planeswalker going, you're really not in a good spot as the red-white deck here.
Yeah, you see an Ugin and a Thoughtseize go by with Satyr Wayfinder finding a land, Scry from Jack Fogle. Here comes another 2-drop. Here's a Seeker of the Way.
This Chain to the Rock's actually going to get to deal an extra damage and clear the blocker out of the way for Ben Stark. So not absolutely useless, but he needs to find a mountain first.
Mountain's a big issue here with Chain to the Rocks. I think we're going to see an Apex Predator. Yes, we are. There's Garrick. He makes a Beast token. And passes the turn.
This is looking rough for Ben now. I mean, when your opponent has a 7-cost Planeswalker in play, and you're the aggro deck, and they're still at 11.
Yeah, and the Planeswalker's on 6.
Yeah. And it's also a Planeswalker that has the ability to gain you life.
Ugh.
It's just kind of gross. Garruk Apex Predator, just such a powerful card here.
Yeah, we've
watched
seen it
this
just
card.
picking off planeswalkers, making tokens, just doing everything.
Elspeth just been getting hit in the face with an axe repeatedly this weekend, and now we're watching Garruk do some work against red-white aggro. Although I highly doubt we're going to see Garruk doing any work in games 2 or 3 in this matchup.
Yeah, it looks like a second chain to the rocks for Ben Stark. But still no mountain, so...
A few different options here for Ben. It looks like he does have a couple burn spells in hand. He may want to hold on to them, though, so that he can just send off a flurry of burn spells on Jack's end step and then maybe finish him off on his turn, catch Jack off guard. Really kind of needs Jack, though, to not use the minus ability on Garruk that will gain him that 2 life from Seeker of the Way.
We saw Brad Nelson Bile Blight his own Siege Rhino just to change the way the gain life worked off of Garruk.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very powerful effect, and life totals are very relevant in the current standard format, especially as the Sultai control deck, where you don't have the ability to gain back the life as easily as, say, decks that play cards like Courser of Crewfix, or Sorin, or Seeker of the Way, for that matter.
All right, Wild Slash takes out the Satyr Wayfinder. Ben before the match said, he goes, I honestly have not played against a lot of Garruk Apex Predator in the standard format.
Not many of us have.
He's like, I don't have a lot of reps here. So Lightning Strike takes out the Beast token. That's 2 prowess triggers for the Seeker of the Way.
So, I mean, he could finish off the Garruk with a Wild Slash, or he could just...
I think that's what's going to happen here. So, yep. So a big swing, a lot of cards expended for Ben Stark to clear that Garruk. He gets a nice chunk of life back, but really his life barely matters to Jack Fogle.
Yeah, Jack Fogle doesn't care about his opponent's life total really at all. I mean, it'll eventually matter when he's, got a Planeswalker in play and is ultimating it, but...
So here's Bile Blight on the Seeker. Now Soulfire Grandmaster from Ben.
I mean, we've seen Jack just... he hasn't found a Dig Through Time or a Treasure Cruise yet, though, and that's really how his deck ends up winning the game.
Yeah, I've kept watching him play. I've compared those cards to buses. You're waiting for one to show up, and then once one shows up, they all show up in a row.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like he has to be under enough pressure where drawing cards feels dangerous. It's like trying to make water boil when you're watching it.
So, in comes Soulfire Grandmaster. Satyr Wayfinder jumps in the way and goes in the yard. And there's an Outpost Siege. That's a huge card here for Ben Stark.
Absolutely.
Remember, Jack Fogle took one of those with his Thoughtseize early on, basically on turn 1, because he was scared of that card. It's an extra card turn for Ben Stark.
No, Ben actually not doing such a bad job playing to the long game here.
Right. So here's Kiora the Crashing Wave. Decides to draw a card and get an ability to play an extra land this turn.
So, has the Bile Blight in hand to deal with the Soulfire Grandmaster. But another threat for Ben there.
Yeah, draws a free Seeker of the Way here. So that gets Bile Blighted. And now Ben will play the Seeker of the Way. And there's the mountain.
But now he's already dispatched the 2 creatures there.
Yeah, I mean, he would have much rather, use those 2 Chain to the Rocks to get rid of those creatures and had that burn in hand.
Yes, absolutely. And those Chain to the Rocks could have dealt with the 3/3 even, which you know, a lightning strike is pretty valuable. I mean, it represents 4 points basically when you
it's
have all those Browse creatures.
more than 25% of Jack Fogle's life total right now. So, okay, so Seeker of the Way can't do any damage. It's put in a bubble,
floating in the air, in the water,
just flailing. Here comes an Ashiok. Ashiok's going to rip 3 cards off the top. One of which is a Soulfire Grandmaster. There's a way to get back some life.
Absolutely. Ashiok is one of those cards
Outpost Siege gets...
Stoke the Flames.
Yeah, a Stoke the Flames for Ben Stark.
Yeah, Ashiok has just completely overperformed every time I've watched Jack Fogle play this deck. It's a card we see very little of, but it's an extremely powerful Planeswalker.
Okay. Stoke the Flames targets Jack, and he gets redirected to the Kiora.
So releases his Seeker of the Way from the bubble. Now Jack can just use this Ashiok to drop a 2/2 into play. And I imagine that's what he's going to do. Although, if he has another removal spell in hand, he may just want to get that Ashiok out of burn range because it could just be the game. That could be his finisher here.
Yeah, this is how he wins. He wins with Planeswalkers.
And he's playing a lot of them. He weaves Nightmares. He's a Predator.
Okay, plays a Soulfire. Grandmaster, that is.
And Soulfire Grandmaster can buy back spells for Jack here, which is pretty good considering how many lands he has in play.
See, he's getting Bile Blight with buyback?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is dirty. I mean, I haven't felt that dirty since I was thrown headfirst into a garbage can by the captain of the football team in high school.
Oh my gosh. Bile Blight with buyback. There is a lightning strike for Ben.
He absolutely has to get a Soulfire Grandmaster off the table. Oh, no, Ashiok.
He has to get Ashiok off the table.
Oh, he has, and he has to Chain to the Rocks.
He can start using the Chain to the Rocks. And there's Seeker of the Way.
And this Outpost Siege doing a lot of work in this match. I mean, we see Ben just, he keeps having more and more gas for Jack to deal with. And it's looking like Jack is kind of on the ropes here. I mean, he's got a Bile Blight in his hand, but...
he's looking for, as soon as he finds that first dig-through time.
Yeah, I mean, it'll break the game wide open if he's able to find a dig-through time, but...
All right, there's a Plains for Ben. Plays Evolving Wilds, though. Wants to thin his deck before that Outpost Siege triggers again.
And that's...
And Sultai Charm on the Outpost Siege.
So now
that was the card he left on top.
Drawing off the top now.
Playing fair, as it were.
Yes. Playing a game of war here in the finals of the Grand Prix. Of course, we know that...
Once Jack Fogle finds a Treasure Cruise or a Dig Through Time...
Or even another big Planeswalker. If he's able to find something like an Ugin, Spirit Dragon...
Sure.
I mean, the potential value of a card on the top of Jack's library is significantly higher than that of Ben's. So Jack had a pretty significant advantage at this stage of the game. Ben can also just draw completely dead cards, where Jack, if he draws a non-land, is guaranteed to get at least something out of it.
Pushes a card with Temple of Triumph. And Temple of Malady reveals another Sultai Charm for Jack Fogle, and he keeps that. He's going to quickly cash that in.
Absolutely. Imagine to draw 2 and then discard 1.
There's a Hero's Downfall and a Crux of Fate.
Yeah. So now,
fine. Here's a Rabble Master.
And that's just going to eat something real quick.
Gets Valorous Stanced.
Ooh.
Save the Goblin Rabble Master. Take 1.
So I think Jack has to blow this Crux of Fate this turn.
All right, well, that's starting to look like he's thinking about Delve mana.
Yeah, and that does not sound good for the Hall of Famer on the other side of the table.
Did he draw a banned card?
Well, this card It's banned in the most powerful formats of Magic, but
just the embarrassment of mana that he has here. Oh, he's drawn an Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Not yet banned in any formats.
No, I don't think that one's going to get the ban hammer anywhere.
He just ghost fires. He fires off the plus ability on the Ugin to kill the Goblin Rattlemaster. He doesn't care about that token very much.
Yeah, I mean, the Ugin's going to go up at a faster rate than the token could apply pressure to it. And, I mean, now, he's going to ultimate Ugin on the following turn, I believe? And ultimate Ugin, it's, fuel ultimatum, if you will. Gain a whole bunch of life, and yet Ben goes, I know what that card does. All right.
Yawn,
let's play another
game. You've chosen a fun deck to play against me. Wow, Jack Fogle. I just been tearing up this tournament.
And we keep watching him play these games that last, 15, 20 minutes, go to turn 30, and they never look close.
No, he regularly has 14 to 16 mana in play.
Yeah.
He's regularly got 14 to 16 cards left in his library and 14 to 16 cards in his hand.
Just picking through
multiple dig through times on one turn. Literally sees his entire deck in most games. Just goes all the way through it with just chaining dig through times together.
And, one of the interesting parts about a deck like his, where he's just going through the entirety of his library, is then once he starts to get deep enough, he actually knows what cards he's going to draw because he's put them on bottom with the dig through time. So, I mean, writing down that information, he can make plays using that.
All right, so we're going into the sideboarded games here.
Yep.
Tell me what you expect Jack is going to do for Game 2 against Ben Stark.
Well, for Game 2 against Ben Stark, he has access to Pharika's Cure, which is the perfect card for this matchup, and he also has Drown in Sorrow. So Drown in Sorrow and Pharika's Cure both making this definitely a safer matchup, especially when you're on the draw. Jack was lucky to be on the play in that game.
He earned it. He was the number 4 seed.
Yeah, he worked for it.
So in these elimination brackets, the players are seeded 1 through 8 based on their performance in the Swiss. And the higher seed in each match gets to be on the play throughout the top 8. So, in case you're wondering why that mattered.
Yeah, so...
Pharika's Cure
and Drown in Sorrow are the two obvious cards.
What do you think? You take out maybe the more expensive planeswalkers that you don't want to get stuck in your hand?
Absolutely. I think the important cards to take out are things like Garruk, Apex Predator, and you may want to keep in both copies of Ugin, to be honest. Maybe you cut one, but really you just want more reactive cards, where, in a lot of matchups, Ugin and Garruk are good reactive cards. Here, those cards are more finishers and less reactive, and you don't really need finishers. Your deck will just do that on its own by having so many more cards than your opponent in the late game.
All right, talk to us about what you think Ben Stark's can do. We've seen him transform into a mid-range deck. And it was kind of interesting. He was talking to Sam Black, who played a very similar deck, but was playing black for Crackling Doom. Very similar, except for Crackling Dooms. And Ben was like, I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can get the Nomad Outposts in there to make that work, because I have 24 lands, but I absolutely need my temples so that I can scry away lands in Game 1 and scry away spells I can't cast to find lands in Game 2, where I'm going with Stormbreath Dragon and Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker and other cards like that, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, and that's something that's really interesting about the Scry lands, is that you can essentially change the curve of your deck without changing your land count. So you don't need to use these valuable sideboard slots for extra lands if you're going to go bigger, because you can just look for lands more aggressively with cards like Temple of Triumph. So for this matchup, I think Mastery of the Unseen is the ideal card for control matchups, but Jack does have actual answers to that card. He can always just destroy the enchantment. Meanwhile, we also have...
the overperforming Sultai Charm.
Yeah, Sultai Charm is an actual beautiful answer to Mastery of the Unseen, which was supposed to be the trump card for the control matchup. And sure, when you're expecting to play against control decks that are blue-black decks, then Mastery of the Unseen is the perfect card because it gets in underneath their counter magic, and then, their only chance of beating it is Perilous Vault. But in a matchup like this, your opponent can just Sultai Charm it. Still, I think he's going to bring those in. Another card for Ben here would be Sarkin the Dragon Speaker, because it requires a very specific removal spell from Jack Fogle or counter magic. And I'm not sure about Stormbreath Dragon, but it's hard to say. Haste creatures are good against control decks with Wraths, but Jack's deck has so many instants that he can just freely pass the turn repeatedly, and that's not really what you want your opponent to be doing when you have Stormbreath Dragons in your deck.
Right. I wonder if Jack has seen enough of how Ben has sideboard to look at something like the bizarre situation where you're bringing in Freakish Cure and Disdainful Stroke.
Yes. Disdainful Stroke is a good answer to Outpost Siege, which I think is Ben Stark's best route to victory if the game goes further than say turn 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think Ben thought he was a pretty big underdog here when we talked. Either way, he felt like either person he played, Jack or Brad, he was going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's been in trouble in every match in this top 8, though, and hasn't stopped him yet. I mean, that was the first game he's lost in this top 8, despite facing off against 2 pretty rough matchups for him. And interesting to note that on day 1, Ben Stark lost to Brad Nelson, and then today, the murderer's row of Absent Control players that Ben Stark has had to face off against, he has dispatched of each and every one of them. So perhaps he has figured out how to play that matchup, and it's no longer as good as we thought it was, at least when you're playing against somebody like Ben Stark.
Well, the big deal is that, on day 2, not to take out your lightning strikes against that Absent Control deck. But what do you do against Sultai Control? And that was a big question for Ben. He just wasn't sure how this was going to play out. So Ben is kept.
This is not so great hand for Jack Fogle. I believe that he has just a Disdainful Stroke, an Ugin, and then 5 lands, which is the counter argument for wanting to sideboard in your Disdainful Strokes and keeping in your Ugin.
Sure. I'm a little surprised. I thought maybe the Ugins would come out.
Yeah, I thought that it was definitely possible that Ugins and Garrett came out.
He does have 2 in his main.
So Ashiok is a card that probably comes out here too. Ashiok, really overperforming in a lot of the matchups, but against a deck like Red White Aggro, they're pressuring you early when your opponent has stuff to put on the table quickly. It's pretty hard to have a card like that still in your deck. Tasigur is another card that he might want to bring in because it's very hard for Ben to get off the table, and it'll allow him to start double spelling around turn 5 and 6, which is where he really gains that velocity and comes back to win the game. So he could do something on turn 6 like cast Crux of Fate and Tasigur at the same time. Then again, I think his graveyard might just be too valuable of a resource for Murderous Cut and Dig Through Time when he's playing against potential Stormbreath Dragons.
All right. Jack is going to see if he can find 6 cards that work well for him here.
I think Ben is actually going to be pretty surprised by Jack Fogle's sideboard configuration. We know for a fact that there's still some number of Ugin, and there is also some number of Disdainful Stroke in Jack's deck. So both of those cards, things that could easily catch Ben off guard here.
Well, again, how many targets for... the Disdainful Stroke gets quite a bit. It gets the 4 Outpost Siege, gets the 4 Stoke the Flames, it gets the 3 Stormbreath Dragons, and it gets the 2 Sarkins.
Yeah.
All right. We're looking at 6. He decides to keep. Evolving Wilds is the play for Ben Stark. Be pretty surprised if Ben Stark is kept in his Chain Little Rocks, or does he think about bringing them in now because he's leaving some number of them in because he's thinking about Tasigur?
I think he's going to cut them.
Okay. I think so too.
So an interesting thing that's going on here is I'm not sure if Ben Stark's going to bring in the Stormbreath Dragons because there's the presence of Sultai Charm, Hero's Downfall, and Murderous Cut in his opponent's deck. So I could see him just deciding that there are too many 3-mana answers to this 5-mana spell in his opponent's library for that card to matter too much. And also, if you're keeping in Outpost Siege and you want to bring in Sarkin, it's tough to have your curve be that high, even with those Skylines.
All right, Thoughtseize on turn 2. What does it see? It sees an Outpost Siege, another Soulfire Grandmaster, a Stoke the Flames, and 2 lands. Obviously, he's going to take the Outpost Siege here again.
I mean, it depends. If he has Sultai Charm in his hand, then maybe he just wants to give Ben an opportunity to use turn 4. This, like, super important turn in Standard right now. To use turn 4 to just cast this card that's easily dealt with on Ben's end step, and then Jack could, on turn 4, maybe resolve something like Dig Through Time without much pressure.
It looks like he is holding some of his blue spells there, and not much else. Does not have a very action-packed draw. He decides to actually get rid of the Outpost Siege. No Sultai Charm in sight. Looks like he has like Disdainful Stroke, Dig Through Time, and maybe a Treasure Cruise or something. All right, Soulfire Grandmaster comes in. Ben gains a little bit of life.
Soulfire Grandmaster, really a card that was getting cut out of red-white decks. People had 1, and it started as 3 or 4 copies, but then the number kept shrinking every day. And here Ben is back up to 4, and he's the red-white player who's playing in the finals, as opposed to the rest of them who are here this weekend.
Ben has been really happy with the card, really happy with the decisions he made about this deck. This is very much a deck that Ben's been working on for quite some time leading up to this event. And you said maybe working with Jacob Wilson.
I'm not sure. I know they were both on the deck, and they're both pretty huge names, but I don't think Jacob had that many copies of Soulfire Grandmaster, so
there is Drown in Sorrow.
Also known as Ben playing around cards like Drown in Sorrow and Bile Blight by not playing a second copy of Soulfire Grandmaster to the table.
All right. Drown in Sorrow.
Stoke the Flames here from Ben.
Right,
Jack already down to 10.
Yeah. Second Soulfire Grandmaster. She said no Bile Blights.
Yeah.
No Drown in Sorrows. There's too many ways to get 2 for 1 there.
You don't want to run 2 of the same 2-drop into these decks that have access to Bile Blight. It's just, there are too many opportunities to get 2 for 1, especially after board when you know that they have 4 copies of Bile Blight and some number of Drown in Sorrow.
Okay. Jack Fogle falls to 8 here. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Fogle just getting beat up by these 2/2s. And he mulliganed and seemingly finding a lot of blue cards, but not many answers. So gonna have to use 3 mana to Sultai Charm this 2-drop, but Ben might just go ahead and Valor Stance it.
He does.
And again, we see a Disdainful Stroke just stuck in Jack's hand here.
And an Ugin.
And an Ugin. For good measure. It may not matter, though. I mean...
Here's a Lightning Strike at the end of the turn. Jack Fogle is on 3.
And what's he got?
He does have a Bile Blight this time. Another Soulfire Grandmaster for Ben Stark. 1
at a time.
Yeah, that's the way to do it here.
Yeah. Very good patience here from the Hall of Famer. A lesser player probably would have lost this match long ago.
35 Ben is at. He's gained 15 life this game at least.
Lots of life linking.
Looks like he drew a Rabble Master. He did.
And is that enough? Does Jack have a spot removal spell here?
A Hero's Downfall, a Silence the Believers. He's going to dig through time. He's looking.
He needs to find a Bile Blight.
Yeah.
Yeah, no Bile Blight in the top 7 cards, and we're on to a game 3 here.
Yes, we are on to game 3. Jack Fogle says, no, top 7 cards of my deck didn't have an answer.
Sometimes you dig very deep and you still don't find any water, you know?
Yeah, Ben dispatches him. Forces game 3. Let's look at how these two players got here to face off in the finals. There you see number 1 seed Brad Nelson defeated number 8 seed Eric Rath, but he fell to Jack Fogle in the semifinals after Jack Fogle had defeated Alex Magilton. So a lot of Abzan control on that side of the board, and the Sultai control deck just feasted on them. I mean,
yes,
absolutely
gobbled them up.
Absolutely feasted. On the other side of the table, Ben Stark took care of an Abzan control deck of his own, and then another Abzan control deck of his own. So pretty amazing stuff here.
And neither of these players have played against anything but Abzan control thus far in the top 8.
Yeah. And so that's that was just kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Abzan control was really the dominant deck through here.
Yeah, 5 copies in the top 8. We haven't seen a top 8 that's, that monochromatic, if you will, in quite some time. And it's even more surprising considering, how few copies of the deck had day 2 penetration. Like when we looked at the metagame breakdown for day 2, wasn't even in the top 3 decks, and yet there were 5 of them that made it to the top 8. Again, very strong players.
Yeah, and
team on the
again,
deck.
we saw kind of a flipping of the script from day 1 to day 2. Ben Stark able to say, "Oh, I've got to leave my lightning strikes in here because you're bringing in Fleecemane Lions."
Precisely.
And it's really been a slightly different story on day 2 for those Abzan control decks that we're bringing in the Lions.
Yeah, on day 1, when people didn't know what was going on, it was just a field day for those decks. They were, everybody was out. They, they were in sandals. It was disgusting.
Yeah. So, and the Sultai control deck.
It's a pretty exciting deck.
I can't say that. I mean, so like one of the
from the mind of Gerard Fabiano,
Yeah.
like this crazy, nobody could have came up with that. But him.
One of the knocks on the deck, right, is it's very high variance, right? If you don't draw your cards in the right sequence, and we have seen Jack just, the deck has purred in his hands. But we got a little bit of a look at some of the awkwardness that you can, if you draw your cards out of sequence there, the Disdainful Stroke and the Ugin, in situations where he needed something, more, he needed more Bile Blights and Heroes Downfalls and Drown in Sorrows. All right, there you get a look at the players. Pro Tour Hall of Famer Ben Stark just forced this game 3. Jack Fogle looking to hit silver here in the Pro Players Club, looking to string together 3 invites to the Pro Tour, get himself carried into next season. Joined Team TCG player recently, working with those guys.
Yeah, a Team TCG player, unbelievably dominating performance here. 5 people in the top 8,
right.
As many as this as many as the Abzan control deck.
We're underway here. Opulent Palace leads things off. Temple of Triumph for Ben Stark.
This is a tough decision.
Again, we talked about a lot of what you do on these scries depends on how you've sideboarded. So you really these are some tough decisions in the early turns. Second Opulent Palace for Fogle. Is there a 2-drop for Ben? Of course there is. It's a secret in the way.
He's playing 8 of them.
Seder Wayfinder for Fogle.
Yeah, the hardest working 1/1 for 2 in Standard.
He's got a choice between a Polluted Delta or an Urborg.
Imagine just going to grab that Urborg, gives Ben no advantage here, and
Well, you remember the thing about the Polluted Delta.
it fills his graveyard more. Yeah, precisely.
And that's
it must be getting late.
He just needs a critical mass of fuel for his delve cards. He's going to just chump block this Seeker in the way. First chance he gets,
Yeah, then once he cracks that polluted tilt, he's already got 5 cards in his graveyard. Hypothetically, he could be playing a Tasker for 1 on the following turn, plus a removal spell.
So Goblin Rabble Master comes down, and he doesn't have to chomp. He can actually trade with a token, but he does. Doesn't crack the Delta just yet. Maybe still looking for some lands. Doesn't want to decrease the chances of drawing that next land. Remember, he had to Wayfinder for that land.
So did he find the Drown in Sorrow here? That would be very good. And that's how we've seen these red decks lose post-sideboard quite a bit, is when they, have a 2-drop into a Rabble Master. It's an ideal start, but when you run that into a Drown in Sorrow, you're just...
That sure looks like... Well, it could be a Hero's Downfall on the route. Nope, it is Drown in Sorrow. So 2 for 1, add a Scry for Jack Fogle. And he's like, that's not a land, I'm going to push it.
Yeah, that looks like a 7-mana cost Planeswalker. Not quite what I'm looking for on turn 3 against my red-white aggro opponent.
And here's a second Rabble Master, and Jack falls to 16 from the Goblin attack.
Very important here, though. Jack failing to find a 4th land on his turn, and that could be troublesome.
There's one. He's got a Temple.
Puts another Planeswalker on the bottom of his deck.
He's like, I can find those later. I'll shuffle them back in with a fetch land. And, there's your Farika's Cure. Gains back 2 of the life, and then a Tassiger to just gum up the ground.
Yeah, and he can keep his graveyard looking very impressive here. And by putting the Sultai Charm as the only card there, that's a really good target because it deals with potential Stormbreath Dragons, Outpost Siege.
I like to call this curating your graveyard.
Yes.
Here comes the Stormbreath Dragon.
Yes. Speak of the devil. Stormbreath Dragon. Lots of thunderstorms across the U.S. this week, and snow thunderstorms.
Okay.
We have Stormbreath Dragon.
5th land. There's the Hero's Downfall.
Is that a Mastery of the Unseen in Ben's hand?
It is. It is a Mastery of the Unseen.
Well, I think he may play a 6th land and a Mastery of the Unseen, because he actually will probably just get this Tasker off the table, though. That doesn't seem like something that's too easy to do in post-border games for his deck.
No, I mean, again, that's why I was wondering, like, the only thing that can really do that is Chain to the Rocks for him.
Yeah.
Or, like, block a Goblin and Soak Flames, but Jack's not going to step into that.
Tassiger, so strong in this standard format.
Here comes an Outpost Siege, but that is almost certainly going to get countered with a Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, so at this point, Jack, again, firmly establishing control of the game. I mean, he's not out of the woods yet, but he's about to untap with Tassiger in play.
Was Ben baiting out the counter, though, so he can stick the Mastery of the Unseen? He does have a land in hand.
Well, Mastery of the Unseen gets around to Disdainful Stroke
but
anyway.
But not negate.
That's
which
true.
He has to be considering there.
So he does get to stick that Mastery of the Unseen.
Yeah.
I think he would rather stick the Outpost Siege, to be honest, though.
Yeah. The Sultai Charm takes down the Mastery of the Unseen. We talked about that as we were leading up to the match.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be the sideboard card for against the control decks, but not many control decks have the ability to deal with artifacts and enchantments quite as well as the Sultai Charm packing control decks.
All right, so Token runs into Tasker here, and Tasker obviously blocking the token. Then Stoke the Flames attempts to finish off the Sultai Legend, but Disdainful Stroke, again, coming down in clutch fashion. That was a card I questioned him on bringing in, and it's turning up aces here in Game 3.
Plenty of targets for him in this.
Yeah.
In this matchup.
Looks like Ben might be out of gas. Yeah, he's just going to pass the turn. So.
All right, Ben, what card can I have? Ben will probably give him a Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah, I mean,
Sultai Charm. None of these seem really good.
Even a Hero's Downfall? Like, what do you do here? There's not a single card you could give him that does not effectively deal with Stormbreath Dragon for less mana than Stormbreath Dragon costs.
Yeah.
Not a single one.
It looks like he gives him the most expensive one.
Yeah.
Well,
Take a Hero's Downfall.
he also gives him the one that doesn't, if he somehow sticks an Outpost Siege or somehow sticks, a Mastery of the Unseen, the Hero's Downfall doesn't deal with that.
Yeah. Hero's Downfall, a more narrow removal spell in a matchup like this. Not so narrow, usually, as a good answer against Planeswalkers and creatures.
Seventh land for Ben Stark. Stoke the Flames.
Darting to Essiger. Yeah, what is this card that Ben is playing right now? Arc Lightning. There's a card I didn't expect to be in his deck after board. I mean, maybe there's something we're missing. I mean, maybe he just has too many cards he wants to take out?
Yeah. Well, you know what? He's got to kill that Tasker.
Yeah. Absolutely must.
And Jack Fogle casts Dig Through Time in response to the Arc Lightning. Can he find a negate? Did he leave negate in?
I doubt it. Again. But a lot of the things that I did not expect are happening in this matchup now.
Well, again, these guys have to do the dance around their sideboards. Is Ben Stark going big? Is he going to bring in creatures?
Yeah, a lot of leveling and re-leveling going on here. So Ben using 2 cards there to deal with the Tasker, which already netted Jack an extra card. And dealt with the 1/1 on Ben's side of the table. So, not necessarily ideal for Ben, but at least he's no longer facing down a 4/5 that accrues card advantage for Jack repeatedly. I spoke too soon once again.
Temple of Deceit pushes a card, and Tasker comes down for 1 mana.
Shoves his foot directly into my mouth.
Yeah, it's just, he's like, can I have Dig Through Time or Heroes Down? Oh, you can have the Heroes Down.
I would assume that would be his choice there. Here now, during upkeep, he may activate the... Nope. All right.
Satyr Wayfinder comes down, hits a land.
The negate is in his deck.
Yeah. Tasker gets in for 4. Ben is on a 2-turn clock here.
Yeah. Not looking great for him. I mean, it's not looking remotely okay for him even.
That's the game. Ben Stark extends a hand. Jack Fogle, Sultai control. I don't know how many players were even playing that deck in the tournament. I think he was the only person on day 2.
He was the only person on day 2. Maybe not the only one, but I don't think there were more than 2 at all.
Yeah, very, very underrepresented archetype. It's we saw it win an open at the beginning. First week of Standard. Really not reared its head much since then. But there, Jack Fogle just running rampant through this field. Picks up a huge chunk of pro points. Gets it. He's qualified for Pro Tour Dragons to Tarkir on the last possible weekend, and putting himself in a position to get to silver, which would qualify him for not just Pro Tour Dragons to Tarkir, but Pro Tour Magic Origins and the first Pro Tour of